Every now and then, I like to give you lovely people some good news. Because you know what? Every now and then, we get some good news. And I'm nothing but a vessel for reality. That's what my job is here. So I'm not what we call a narrative humper, which is I have, one narrative and I keep going back to it and point it out over and over. No, I embrace the nuance. I embrace the fact that the world is messy and complicated, and sometimes you get horrendous news and sometimes you get good news. Well, today, like I said, I have great news for you. So this is in the American Prospect, which, by the way, is a phenomenal outlet. You should definitely check it out. It's David Dayen's outlet. Look at this. Biden administration to restore labor rule gutted in the 1980s. The Department of Labor plans to reverse the neoliberal era gutting of a law that stopped contractors from bidding down wages in federal procurement. So in other words, and they'll go on, to explain this in more detail, Jimmy Carter and then Ronald Reagan in the 1980s, it was the full neoliberalization of the government. It was full, embrace the free market, embrace deregulation, embrace low taxes on the rich. And prior to that, we had the New Deal era, where that was not the idea. During the New Deal era, it was like the government has a role in the economy. The government should be the spender of last resort, should provide people with jobs. We should tax the wealthy and redistribute it with social safety net programs. We should regulate business to make sure they don't abuse the public. And so Biden is looking at this and he's going, okay, this rule doesn't make any sense. I want workers to get paid more, so let's go ahead and change this rule so they get paid more. President Joe Biden is set to restore a New Deal labor rule in what could be the most significant change to construction worker pay since the rule was gutted in the 1980s. Biden already signed project labor agreements, which basically raises the pay of about 200,000 construction workers who have a contract with the federal government. That was already one of his more pro-labor things that he did. That was definitely a step in the right direction. Now, he's also done things that were not good. Like, for example, he stabbed the railroad union in the back. Everybody remembers that. And so this is the case with Joe Biden. We see it time and time again. He's got one foot solidly in that neoliberal era, and then he's got one toe slightly dipped back in the New Deal era. He's sort of like riding the line, and his governance has really shown that. There's been many things which are, part and parcel with Bill Clinton and Barack Obama and Ronald Reagan and those types. But then every now and then he gives you a little sprinkle, a little bit of hope, with some genuinely social democratic reform. They say the Department of Labor is preparing to issue a final rule tomorrow on the DavisBacon Act, which sets a wage floor for construction workers on public works projects. DavisBacon is often known as a prevailing wage, as it refers to the going rate for laborers in a given area. The change could raise the salaries of the lowest paid workers on infrastructure, ranging from highways and bridges to battery plants, hydrogen production facilities, and semiconductor fabs. If upheld in court, it would be a step towards shrinking the wage gap between northern states, which have generally higher worker protections, and the southern and southwest, where contractors are more hostile to unions and reliant on a migrant workforce. The new rule is expected to particularly benefit workers in states like Texas, one of the deadliest places for construction workers, and other states lacking their own prevailing wage laws. At the same time, you have Governor Greg Abbott signing a law which bans mandatory water breaks for construction workers working outside in triple-digit heat. Biden's going, well, how about no on that? But also, we're going to raise their pay. We're going to mandate higher pay for these low-paid construction workers. The rule, which will be finalized by Acting Labor Secretary Julie Su, is expected to be immediately challenged, of course. The Associated Builders and Contractors, ABC, a trade group that fights unionization, could file suit as soon as this week. The DOL could be forced, that's Department of Labor, could be forced to defend the rule for years in court. Another recent rule change was litigated for over a decade. We're always going to keep coming back to this when we talk about the way our system works. If you don't address the judicial tyrants, we will forever be fighting an uphill battle. So the judicial tyrants are the Federalist Society goons who fully believe in this neoliberal era. They've drunk the Kool-Aid. They believe in trickle-down economics. They believe in deregulation. And when you stack the courts with these people, they make bogus constitutional arguments that there's no other option. We are going to pretend that the only constitutional way to govern is in a neoliberal way. You can't do worker protections. You can't do redistribution of wealth. The government can't get too involved in the matters of business. This is their mindset. So what the left needs to do is get really serious about this. The Federalist Society project didn't just spring up out of nowhere. This has been decades and decades in the making. They trained far right-wing judges with all these bogus arguments, and then they got them sitting on the court. So the left needs to have a similar thing in action. You need a committed, dedicated left-wing judicial infrastructure that trains people. We need a left-wing equivalent and answer to the Federalist Society. We need like New Deal style judges. Because I know people say, oh my God, that's judicial activism. Everything is judicial activism because everything is political. There is no, we're holier than thou, we're above politics, we're above the fray, we just call balls and strikes. This has nothing to do with ideology. No, right-wing judges, their decisions have to do with ideology, and left-wing judges, their decisions have to do with ideology, and centrist judges, their decisions have to do with ideology. How you interpret the law is always going to be through your prism of your political ideology. It's inescapable. Now, some people might pretend like, oh, no, that's not how I... No, of course it is how they do it. Of course it is. So we need to fix the judicial tyrants. We need to fix the judicial supremacists. We need to get true New Deal-style Democrats on the court to make their own legal arguments, and we need to make it so that stuff like this gets upheld. Because if it's not, then even if we get a crusading president to do the right thing, President Bernie Sanders or whoever, President Marianne Williamson, they could run into a brick wall if they say, oh, you know what, it's actually unconstitutional to do Medicare for all. It's like, what? It's not clear how soon the new Davis-Bacon rules will take effect. In general, agencies set regulatory effective dates 30 to 60 days after publication of a rule, but may give regulated parties more time to come into compliance. Anticipating new government incentives from bills such as the CHIPS and Science Act, clean tech, and advanced electronics companies have broken ground on new plants. Since the start of 2022, construction spending on new factories has more than doubled. But many of those projects have not yet received federal funds, meaning the job sites are not yet subject to prevailing wage provisions. TSMC and Intel, for example, are both building colossal chip fabs near Phoenix that are not yet under Davis-Bacon. Progressives have long, this is a huge quote they have in the middle of the article, progressives have long argued that even if Davis-Bacon raises the cost of building, it could still lead to more public works projects. Labor unions have led the Inside Baseball campaign to restore Davis-Bacon to its pre-1970 standards. So this is one of the areas where Biden is listening to the labor union. So there's areas where he's not. In the IRA, they have Made in America provisions for billions of dollars in investment for green technology, for green jobs. But the union said, no, don't just do Made in America, do Made in America and union. Have labor rules around that. And Biden said no on that front. So in some ways, he hasn't listened to the unions, but at least on this issue and on some others, he has listened to the unions. Climate advocacy groups such as the Labor Environmental Blue-Green Alliance have been largely absent from the push for Davis-Bacon reform, despite longstanding efforts and philanthropic funding poured into it, blah, blah, blah. Okay, anyway, we don't need to get into the rest of this. You can go read the whole article if you'd like. Biden is trying to go back to a New Deal era rule, which was this thing being overturned was a cornerstone of the neoliberal era. He wants to pay these workers more. He wants to mandate that they get paid more. Okay? Look, credit where it's due. And again, to come back to the original point, we don't do narrative humping on this show. I give you guys facts. I give you guys information. Yes, I give you my opinion too. Of course. I don't play hide the ball with that. I'll give you my opinion. But the facts have to come first. And this is something that's positive. Credit where it's due to the Biden administration. Now let's hope it holds up in court. By the way, if it doesn't, as always, as I just said, we got to work on reforming these courts. We have to do it. Because if we don't do it, then everything comes to naught and it's a waste of time and effort anyway. Let's not make that the case. Let's make it so we have both good governance and a good approach when it comes to the judicial branch. And it's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of effort. It requires a lot of funding. But, like, it's the only way out. Change, even when change is fast, it's still slow. You understand what I'm saying? Even when change is fast, it's still way too slow. Because in an ideal world, you snap your fingers and you have Medicare for all. Or whatever, fill in the blank with whatever positive policy prescription. But it doesn't work like that. Even if we did get Medicare for all literally today on paper, it'd be a tremendous amount of work and a tremendous number of court cases. And it's so much work and effort. And that's the uphill battle that we fight. But at least now we're moving in the right direction on an issue like this. And I hope that, again, we can get these courts to fall in line. The left has an answer for the Federalist Society. And then, there actually is hope. There's a lot of very smart people who are saying the neoliberal era is coming to an end. That a lot of these things work in cycles, and we're coming to the end of the cycle of the neoliberal era. I am kind of skeptical of that idea, because I think the reason we're in the neoliberal era is the legalization of bribery and corruption in this country. And we still have legalized bribery and corruption. So I'm skeptical of that claim, but that doesn't mean I want to, do nothing to fight back. Rest on our laurels. Just sit and say, oh, it'll end naturally anyway. No, I want to be involved in trying to beat it back, trying to win New Deal-style protections and higher wages. And this is definitely the beginning of that. One more point I wanted to make about the neoliberal era, at least in part, showing some signs of coming to a close. This is a big deal, guys. So this is in Axios. The South and Mountain West see manufacturing boom under Biden. This has a lot to do with the IRA and some of his other laws, the CHIPS Act. Now, there's parts of the laws you might take issue with, and I understand that. We can get into the finer points of it, but as a general rule, these things are good. Look at this. So if it's dark purple, it's a jump of 10% or more in manufacturing jobs. If it's light purple, it's between 5 and 10%. If it's very light purple, it's between 0 and 5% increase. There's only 2 states in the country where there's been a net decrease in manufacturing jobs. Everywhere else, you're gaining some manufacturing jobs. So they go on to explain the U.S. economy has added some 800,000 manufacturing jobs nationwide under Biden. That's a big, big deal. And if Joe Biden ends up winning re-election, this is definitely one of the biggest reasons why. Because no matter what other noise and nonsense is going on, no matter how old he appears in his press conferences, if people are going, hey man, you raised my wages, or you got my brother a job, or you revived our small town, which was falling apart at the seams, can't downplay that. That's real as a heart attack. Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.